Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to Apply. All right, so today I have Ed Hetherington on the line, and he is president over at Hetherington Advisors, LLC. And he's also, I'm proud to announce, an upcoming author in our upcoming book that's going to be released later this month. We've been working on this book for a long time. Just a quick side note here, or not to spoiler it, we're not going to get too far into the book today, and that's intentional because we're going to, well, number one, we want to sell books. The book's not out and it's not live, so we definitely want you to pick up a copy. But we will be bringing Ed back onto the show once the book is out and live, so that you can obviously pick up a copy, and then we're going to do a deep dive into the book as well. But first off, hey, Ed, welcome to the show. Good to finally get you on.
Yeah, good to be here. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
So again, great to finally have you on, and we got a lot to talk about today. So as I mentioned, we're not going to go too far into the book, but I'm just thrilled to talk about what we've been doing in the industry and my learning curve and the things you've been teaching me. And even when I was a fly on the wall at the AED conference with yourself and with the guys over at Vanguard Captive Management and Brad and the rest of the team over there, learning about the industry and definitely in the learner's seat about what makes this industry move, what makes it tick, which you've been part of for a very long time. So we're going to get into that and more. But to get this kicked off, Ed, we'll start this episode with what we like to call our Mission Matters Minute. So Ed, at Mission Matters, one of our aims and our goals is to amplify stories for entrepreneurs, for executives, for experts, for people, and also for industries, to shed light on industries that we feel need to be heard, and there needs to be more awareness built around. So that's our mission and our goal. Ed, what mission matters to you?
Well, I've been in the industry about 51 years now, and it's been very good to me. It's somewhat of an industry that is not as heard of in a lot of areas. So, I think this is a good opportunity to expand the overall knowledge of the industry.
Yeah.
It's only becoming popular to do podcasts, so within the industry. So I look forward to, getting more out about equipment leasing and financing, and then talk a little bit about what Brad and the team is doing at Vanguard and what I'm involved on as a consultant to them.
Yeah. Well, great to have you on. And I guess just to get us started, let's go back. As you mentioned, you've been in the industry for quite a few decades. Let's go back to the early years. Like how did you first get into this? Like, where did that begin for you?
Yeah, I was working part-time for a major car manufacturer, collecting car accounts and repossessing cars in some of the interesting areas of New York City back in the late 60s, early 70s. So,
oh man, and live to tell about it. Go ahead. I love.
Yeah, well, when you're young, it's more of an exciting thing than, you don't see the danger in it, but it was interesting. And so I applied for a job after that as a collector for an equipment leasing company, and not really knowing what that meant. Somebody asked me, what equipment are you talking about? I said, I don't know, So, but it turned out to be a general equipment leasing company.
Mm-hmm.
But I was originally involved with a lot of photocopier business and collecting those accounts. But then, during the many decades later, I did a little bit of everything in the industry, and that was what I think one of the good things, back in the early 70s, where you didn't have all this technology, and so everybody had to do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
And so, you learned about credit, you learned about operations, you learned about documentation, so there wasn't an aspect that you didn't really touch.
Yeah.
And, you really started at the bottom, and, the opportunity to take your career in different directions, whether it be more of a sales marketing role or more of an operation role or more of a credit role. And so I dabbled a little bit of everything, but then decided, to take a sales opportunity. And, after many years of doing that, got into sales management. And the last 20 years, I was involved with what we call a captive finance company. We set up a captive finance company in 2002 for a major construction equipment manufacturer, and I operated that for about 20 years as president. We were in many countries. It was a global operation. And we pretty much did everything that a captive needed to do to help their manufacturer support their dealers
Mm.
and the manufacturer in terms of financing. So we did
Yeah.
floor plan financing, retail financing, consumer, commercial, supply financing, receivable financing. So it got to be a pretty all-inclusive job.
Mm. I will definitely get back to the finance side and what you did with captives and a little bit further into that. But I want to stay in the early days a little bit longer here. So you're in this sales role and you're leaping out and you're expanding your skill set. At what point, or was there a point, maybe it was a progression, did you know like this would be an industry that, you may build a life in and that you'd be long-term in a business and you felt it was someplace that you fit in? Like, how did that, when did that occur to you?
Yeah, I think it was earlier than that. When I was a collector, I kind of got interested in the equipment, and all the different things that the company was financing.
Yeah.
So back then, that original company, we did, as I said, photocopiers, but we
Mhm.
also were big in transportation, owner operator financing, and
Mm.
trucks and trailers, construction equipment. So there was a lot of diversity, and you
Mm.
got to learn about all these businesses.
Yeah.
And and I think it was early on that I decided that this might work for me. So I actually looked at ways of showing, differentiating myself from
Mhm.
others. So I think I made the decision probably within the first year or two
Wow.
that this might be something that I could pursue,
Mhm.
and that I would enjoy.
Yeah. Amazing. Try to always work in like one pay it forward question, Ed, for the next generation that are watching this as well. So if you were maybe yourself looking back, or even if you're just speaking to the next generation and they're thinking about entering this as a field or as a profession, whether they're starting from the bottom, as you mentioned, to use your words, or otherwise, like what kind of advice would you give someone?
I know it's not in vogue today to start at the bottom,
That's what I want to hear. Come on, give us what
but
you'd say.
but I would say, I would admit that you can't start at the bottom today. It's not practical.
Yeah.
But so I would define it by saying, understand what your business is really about. So
Mhm.
at our core, our business is about credit, the
Yeah.
establishing a credit. So, and how do you do that? With analyzing risk
Mhm.
and being able to take risk. So that's at core of what we do.
Mhm.
So, anybody getting into this industry should spend some time either in the credit department or, taking some of the industry courses on credit. So,
Yeah.
like, even as a salesman, I think a lot of my success was the fact that early on, I understood credit. And
Mm.
so, I did believe there were good deals and there were bad deals. And,
Mhm.
I understand the fact that some deals don't work out. Obviously, I repossess cars. So that's the ultimate of a deal not working out.
Yeah.
And, so,
Pretty black and white.
yeah. So my thing would be, there's not many companies that really have this start at the bottom type of thing
Mhm.
and move you into all different things anymore. But, and no matter what you do, understand what you really do. What is the core product? And our
Yeah.
core product is loaning money, and you loan money by understanding credit.
Mm.
So no matter what part of leasing you want to get into, you should have at least that general understanding of credit.
Mm. And so you found your niche, it sounds like, after you had the opportunity to go to, a lot, to do a lot of different things, right? Like you were boots on the ground, then at some point you transition to sales, then at some point you're going further into now creating programs as well. Maybe let's kind of transition into that part of the conversation. You mentioned that at some point you go and then you start creating these captive programs. Maybe start with just a broad definition of what that means.
Well, most people really deal with captives and have seen it and been part of their lives because, most of the major car manufacturers had what you call captive finance companies.
Hmm.
So that would be your GMACs, your Ford Motor Credit.
Yep.
So, some people might not have realized that they've dealt with a captive, but they really have.
Mm.
And, so all we did is take that premise of what the car manufacturers were doing and
Yeah.
relate it to the equipment leasing industry.
Mm.
And at its simplest point, it's really selling payment and not price.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So if you look, I was going to say, this is dating myself a little bit, but if you remember the old Sunday newspapers, there was pages and pages and pages of car advertising,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Which would
Mm-hmm.
say, depending on what year it was,
Yep.
$119 a month for this car.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays it's $799 a month for this car, right?
Yep.
But that's the way it was sold. They didn't really lead with price.
Mm-hmm.
And so setting up captive programs would allow a manufacturer, or it didn't have to be a manufacturer in those days, it could be a dealership,
Yeah.
would allow them to understand, or have their salesmen understand how to sell payment, not price, how to
Mm-hmm.
lead with payment and not lead with the price, and
Mm-hmm.
and have programs that were consistent to the market. So in some industries where there's some, let's say, seasonality,
Yeah.
we have the ability to have no payments during the slow season,
Mm-hmm.
or smaller payments. So structuring the repayment programs around the needs and the cash flows of the business unit is a big thing. And so working with the manufacturer and coming up with these programs that are consistent,
Mm-hmm.
that are needed by the industry that they're in,
Mm-hmm.
is a big influencer in a customer deciding to buy a particular product.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure that that I'm painting the right picture here. So using the Ford example to just elaborate it on a little bit and make sure that I understand it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say Ford, you're going to buy a car and you're buying it off of the price there. It says it's $299 a month, $300 a month, whatever the amount is. When you go through Ford Credit, that actual Ford Credit, that's a captive, right? That's something that Ford is funding, and there could be obviously there's other pipes in the back, but like Ford, that's a program that is funding. So if you go to, I don't know, Lexus or somewhere else, or Toyota, they have their own separate captive program there, so that are doing their own financing. They have their own design, their own programs. So all of these different auto manufacturers have, or can have their own captives, and that's what's allowed them to keep the prices maybe to where they can move more inventory. Maybe they can do different things, but it gives them flexibility for whatever they need to design or customize for their customer base. Am I accurate on that, or am I off on anything?
You're absolutely accurate on it. It's the manufacturers setting up these captives that have the ability to set programs that they think fit their product and their customer base. Now they also deal with third-party banks, because you have prime and subprime credit and things of that nature. But the captives are the ones that really drive the engine. And where do you see that the most? Well, you see it at what you call these 0% programs. So you see that every manufacturer in whether it be in the car industry or even in our industry, the equipment industry, have what we call subsidized rates. So you have the rate that is appropriate at this time in the economy, but then you have the rate that the manufacturer's programs would give to the end user. And so what happens there is the manufacturer has to buy down that rate. So the lender or the captive finance company still makes the normal yield that they need, but the manufacturer pays the difference to get them to that yield, while providing the end user with the lower interest rate, and sometimes, and many times, it's as low as 0%.
Yeah. So applying this concept to equipment leasing and financing, it would seem as though whatever that piece of equipment is, whatever that piece of heavy equipment is, or otherwise, it would seem that when a dealership or a dealer, which I had the privilege of, as I mentioned before, going to the AED conference or summit with yourself and Brad and some of the other team over in Orlando, which was amazing. And when I was there, I got to speak to different dealers and other individuals, and some of these dealers, it's second, third generation businesses, which was amazing to see all the community together like that. But just to kind of apply that concept of captives to that. So it would seem like, and correct me if I'm off on this, when the dealer decides to set up their own program like that, it can give them maybe some potential benefit in the market to serve their clients better, their clients being whomever wants to lease from them. Am I off on that, or can you kind of just make that
Well,
connection to the equipment like side of things for me?
no, it's correct, except that I would say typically it's not, the dealer is using programs set up by the manufacturer.
Okay.
And those programs are all set up with influence from the dealers of what they need or what their competitors have or what their competitors don't have. And you
Okay.
want to differentiate yourself. But then the manufacturer gets involved, and then the manufacturer typically works, with their own funds, or
Yeah.
they set up what we're trying to set up with Vanguard is what we call virtual captives. But, so it's really, it flows down from the manufacturer to the dealer to the end user customer with input from everybody and what is really needed. So like I said, you have 0% programs, then you have maybe 90-day defer program where you don't have a payment for the first 90 days while you have that equipment. And what that does allows a company that's buying that equipment, it allows them the time to actually go out, build a product with that equipment, right? Build that product, to a company and have time to collect that money before their first payment is due. So it's really, in simplest form, from the get-go with that type of program, the equipment is paying for itself day one. And so,
which for cash flow and otherwise, I mean, who doesn't want that, right?
Right. And especially for, smaller, middle market business.
Absolutely.
This is key. And then, with a captive finance company, you have a little bit different way of looking at credit. And, that's important also, because, a lot of the businesses and, smaller businesses don't do financial statements that are audited and have all the hierarchy of accounting as a major corporation. So captive understands their customer base. And can look at it a little bit differently than somebody, well, even a bank who will more listen to regular credit rules. And with the captive and the equipment leasing business, on the equipment side, the collateral is a very important piece because, that collateral will always have some value.
Would it be accurate or inaccurate to say that, with a more competitive plan, maybe you're moving more inventory and more people are shopping with you? Would that be an accurate statement, or?
No, it's absolutely accurate. I have the saying that selling equipment is hard, but buying equipment is also hard, right? And so this is where these two sentences intersect with each other, right? So it's, you have a seller who, is trying to sell equipment, and he's trying to convince that buyer that his equipment is the right equipment for them at the right price and will do the job that they can make money. On the other hand, that buyer of equipment is trying to say, do I have the right piece of equipment? Will it make me enough money to make a sufficient return? So almost the same questions, but a little bit differently.
Of course.
So the financing very easily brings in, here's a payment. Here's what's going to cost you every month. Or break it down. You could break down the payment to weekly and, and hourly. So a very small businessman can quickly understand if this is affordable for them. So having that all, it's kind of a little bit like solution selling in a way. It's not saying, here's my machine, it's, $300,000. Saying, here's my machine, here's the payment, and then here's what we expect you to make, from this machine, and here's the affordability of it, because our payment is at 0% or no payments for 90 days. And let your cash flow catch up to your debt requirements.
So what would be the reason, and I'm sure this is going to vary, right, from situation to situation, size of company, just a lot of different things. But I'm curious to hear some of the reasons why you've seen maybe some companies haven't explored the captive space or creating a captive. Because to me, it seems like, and again, I obviously don't own a dealership or I don't sell equipment, but to me, it seems like at the highest level, if the auto companies like a Ford or something else have kind of proven this model for a really long time, others are benefiting from it. If I, was in that business. It seems like that would be kind of something that would make sense. I want to be more competitive in my market. I want to move more equipment. I want to, have more options for my customers. Like, why wouldn't somebody kind of explore this?
Now, there's not a good reason not to do it, to be perfectly honest with you. Most people that are selling equipment, have some sort of financing idea
Yeah.
for their business. Now, some of it is more reactive.
Hmm.
So a customer comes in and, gets excited about the piece of equipment
Yeah.
and then says the words that the dealer doesn't really want to react. Well, can you finance this for me? And so now they got to react,
Yeah.
and typically, they have a list of 5 or 10 companies local that they can send the deals to and see if they can get finance. That's very reactive type of financing. It's
Yeah.
not part of a plan. And then, you pass that customer on to somebody, which is,
And see what happens.
and see what happens. And so
Mm.
that's not ideal, in my opinion. And then you get into, okay, let's not be reactive, let's be proactive.
Yeah.
So, so some local dealers will set up their own little programs. But then if you're dealing with, manufacturers size,
Yeah.
so they kind of come in and say, well, let's all work together and set up something. So, as I said earlier, lead with payment and not price. So
Yeah.
very, very, very early in the situation, you will say, here's the payment and we can finance this for you,
Yeah.
assuming you have credit. And then you look today, you have financing alternatives right on websites. So like most of the major manufacturers, if you go to their website, they'll have pictures of their machines and they'll even have costs, but then there'll also be a button. If you want financing, click here, and then you can go in and find out what your payments might be. There might be an application there. So
Yeah.
financing is kind of the key thing that puts that all together and allows for, one-stop shopping.
Yeah. I like going back to the auto example you gave because it's just so clear to me the way like it just makes sense. So could you imagine, Ed, like if you went to Ford and all of a sudden Ford's like, oh, you need financing, and they're like, okay, let me send you to all these third parties and see if they can figure it out and then come back and get your car after.
Right.
Like, let that sink in for a minute. Like, what would that be like? So, but that's what you're describing partially. Like, I'm being a little bit.
Well, because most of the, as I said, a car dealer usually has what they call an F&I person that handles a lot of this, and so they have the opportunity dealing with the captive or with a subprime lender or a bank. So. But they control it, and they control
but it's all in house. They're doing that right there. They're
Yeah.
not saying, let me pass this lead along, and if they can get you taken care of, we're going to. So there's a plan. The whole point is a plan.
The whole point is a plan, and it's a thought out plan. And as I said, using subsidy. Subsidies can get the guy in the door. A lot of times somebody sees an ad that you're running. You're running 0%. That's going to sound interesting to a lot of people. And so that gets them in the door. Now, whether or not they close on that, that's another matter, and it's irrelevant. It gets you as the dealer or the manufacturer up to bat.
Yeah.
And that's what you really want to be. You want the opportunity to get up to bat.
I do want to spend a little bit of the time we have here talking a little bit more, but I know you've been consulting for Vanguard Captive Management, maybe talking a little bit about the vision and that project overall.
Yeah, so I've known Brad a number of years now. We did some business together in my prior life, and when I retired, he said, "Well, there might be some ways we can work together." And so, the initial approach was very much, like a lot of programs that are out there. Setting up, working with manufacturers or large dealers, and setting up virtual captives and things of that nature. But we soon realized, that's kind of been there, done that, and there are a lot of companies doing that. So how do we make this a little different? And so we decided, why don't we just try to outsource the whole virtual captive for a manufacturer? So if you're a manufacturer and you really, don't want to be in the finance business, but you need to be in the finance business in some way, our program will allow you to get all the benefits of having a captive without a lot of the expense, commitment of resources, credit risk, things of that nature. So Where Vanguard comes in is that we not only set up these programs for a manufacturer, we work with lenders and set up very formal program agreements with the lenders,
Yeah.
have what we call key performance indicators. And then Vanguard continues to manage the day-to-day function of the captive. So a manufacturer really doesn't have to dedicate, very little, if any, headcount to the day-to-day operation. Now, they will need to, have somebody on staff that's going to be our key point person, and that will attend meetings with, lenders and customers when needed. But for the most part, Vanguard's offering a complete outsourcing of a virtual captive financing program. So that's very new and different, and that's how we differentiate ourselves.
Yeah, and that makes it. I just want to make sure I caught this correct. So now you're doing all the heavy lifting so that the dealer can, or they can focus on what they do day to day, and they don't have to be like dedicated into the finance business, but they still get the benefits.
Exactly right. So they're not, we are setting up, based on our experiences, and we have many years. I have 51, and Brad has 30, and so we have a lot of experience within the company, so we can set up the programs that are needed for that particular industry, that piece of equipment. What are the things needed best to finance that equipment? Understanding the credit profiles. Going back to my earlier statement, we're in the credit business, so that's the first thing you need to really understand, and then come up with programs that help increase sales, or gain incremental revenue, gain information, and actually help. Two things really is get new business, but also using the program to retain existing customers. So market share is usually a pretty big thing, right? And if you market share, you have to do two things, right? You need to get new customers, right? But you have to keep your old customers, because you can't gain market share if you lose old customers and you get new. You're just playing catch up, right? So financing will also help. Captive financing, especially, will also help you retain customers.
Yeah, and looking at the retention side of things, it would seem that if, let's just say, they came into and there's a program that met their needs and it was easy for them to get through, and whatever it was, whichever one that specifically met it, whether it was the no payments for 90 days or whatever it was, it would seem like they would not even think about, and in some cases, shopping around. They're like, okay, let me go back to my guy, let me go back to my dealer, let me go back to, because of the experience that was there versus maybe some other experience they had in the past. It seems like that would be like a no-brainer almost.
Yeah, no, because you have credit established. So you as an end user have your credit established with that captive, and that captive knows something about you. The best reference a finance company can have is their own reference. So it's not like you paid somebody else as agreed. It's you actually paid me as agreed. So that's very important. So you have your own reference. So so there are things you can do working with existing customers. That because you have information, you can do that. If you didn't have that information, and offer the customer better deals than normal.
Amazing. Well, Ed, this has been a lot of fun getting you on the show. And now I have a better understanding as well of not just the industry, but also of captives. I hope my audience does as well. That being said, we're live today. It's February 4th, 2025. Year's just kind of getting going. What's next for you? Like what's next for 2025 for Ed?
Well, we have a lot of work to do in rolling out this program for Vanguard, and I do have other clients, and so a little bit more of the same, but I am semi-retired, so trying to mix a little bit.
Man, you don't seem semi-retired to me. I was with you at that AED summit, and you logged a lot of steps.
I know. Well, that caught up with me later in the week, I think, a little bit. So kind of blending retirement with still doing keeping my my brain into the financing.
Fantastic. And if somebody's listening or watching this, and if they want to learn more about either Vanguard or about Hetherington Advisors, how do they do that?
I have a website, Hetherington Advisors LLC. Just go on, and there's something about me and has my phone and everything to contact me.
Awesome. And for Vanguard, it's vancap.com if anybody wants to check that out as well. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters and you haven't done it yet, hit the subscribe or follow button. This is a daily show. Each and every day, we're bringing you new content, new ideas, new stories, and hopefully new inspiration to help you along the way in your journey as well. So again, hit that subscribe or follow button. And Ed, man, I'm excited for this book. It's almost, we got maybe another week or two. It's coming out. We'll have you back on the show. Finally, the end of this journey of creating this book, or I should say the beginning, right, of promoting and getting it out there. But man, appreciate all you do. And thank you for coming on the show.
Look forward. Thanks for having me.